Welcome everyone to the author discussion of our latest anthology, She Holds the Line, Black Women Speak on Gender Ideology, Narratives of African American Women's Descent from the Transgender Movement. My name is Nevline, and I am the editor and a contributing author of the book. And before we get started, I just want to actually read a brief synopsis so that we can all understand what we're going to get into today. From the back of the book, She Holds the Line is a groundbreaking anthology of personal essays and poetry exploring the adverse impact of the transgender movement on the lives of Black women. This powerful collection features 13 African American women who courageously share their narratives of how the modern trans movement reinforces oppression and erasure within their own lives and the world at large. Through vulnerable stories and sharp analysis, these women critique the rhetoric of queer culture and share their vision of what true liberation and healing can look like for all of us. So today I'm very honored and pleased to have my two beautiful guests here, co-authors of the book who also shared their essays and poetry, Sia and Krysta. Welcome. So I was thinking that we can just get into some brief introductions, and then after that we can get into the pieces that we wrote and discuss like a little bit about our individual pieces that we contributed to the book, and then after that we can get into a discussion and Q&A. So really free flowing. I feel really good about this. So who wants to go first?
I'll start. Okay, so my name is Sia and I am a native New Yorker. I have family from North Carolina, New York City, Antigua, Ghana, so like kind of all over the African diaspora. Let's see, what about me? So native New Yorker, I was homeschooled for the majority of my childhood and attended public high school and then went on to attend a historically Black university. And I was instrumental in starting my school's first Gay Straight Alliance. And so back then when I started it, I didn't have an awareness about what the harms of gender ideology were. And I was definitely part of the LGBT movement, if you will. But I think I began to register my dissent maybe a decade after I graduated. So I'm really pleased to just share more about my story as we get into this conversation and just talk about my journey from being part of the movement and then realizing that there was something that was actually oppressive to women and Black women in particular.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, my name is Krysta Alora. I am 38, from Jersey originally. I've been living in New York now for since December. I've been every letter of the LGBTQ, exploring all that, and I am currently detransitioning right now. It don't look like it, but I'm working on that and going from the inside out. Spiritually, I start, because I've been back and forth between trans, detrans, for survival purposes. And I have just been learning, paying attention to the agenda versus what is, what feels most natural to people. And I got a lot to offer in terms of perspective, and I'm excited to share what I wrote. I believe, some people are meant to be trans, some people are not. But I'm excited to dig deeper with my sisters here. So, yeah.
Thank you both. So I'll introduce myself. My name is Nevline. I am a multidisciplinary artist. I do many different forms of art. Of course, I'm an author. I'm also a filmmaker, documentary filmmaker. I produced the feature-length documentary Reflections on Heard Black Women and Civil Rights many years ago. I'm also a pole dancer, and a little bit of fashion design. I did design this shirt, so
It's beautiful.
thank you. Yeah, and so yeah, I actually I'll get into it later because the essay that I wrote in the book, gets into my story more. But I've been outspoken about gender ideology for many years, starting in 2013, but really like focusing a bit more on it through my writing from 2022. And so this book was just it was a vision that I've held for a really long time, and I always have focused on Black women in whatever work that I do, including like the filmmaking work that I did. And so this book was very aligned with the kind of work that I do as an artist and cultural practitioner. So I'm excited to dig deeper into our pieces. They're all of the pieces in the book are so beautiful and so uniquely strong. And I'm very honored to be able to create this work and also to be in community with the both of you today. So we can now like get into the pieces that we wrote. So yeah, this is just like your space to introduce your piece however you'd like to, and we can just take some space to talk about, to like reflect on it together. Yeah. So who would like to go first?
All right. Right back at me. That's cool. So my poem I wrote is called She, but only the letter H is capitalized, because that's where my mentality and my physical has been present for a while now. And in my first line, I wrote, I always knew I was different. And I often hear trans people say that, like that, oh, how did you know you were trans? And then we all say the same thing is, well, I always knew I was different, And, just continuing to go into it. I mean, I really dove into it. I pretty much had spoke about how my family has been very envious of me, envious of my beauty, envious that I was their version of starting over. My family has been deep into witchcraft, and I didn't know it for the longest time up until like maybe 5, even more so years ago. Just putting all the pieces together, a lot of memories has started to come back. Things that they said that they didn't think I would remember, things that they did, and being brought up in a family that's been a part of a cult. They checked my destiny. They pulled all the cards out on me, seeing what was what. And I had men in my family who wanted to express, their feminine side, but they're old school. They're part of the military. They're part of the government. It wouldn't have been, accepted. And the women in my family, some in the same position, some not, but were envious of my beauty because they couldn't see the beauty from within. They didn't know what doing the work looked like, and all they knew was survival mode. And for some of my family, I forgive them for that part. So having done so much work on myself, I've done inner work on myself for about 20 years now, and I'm talking past life work, chakra work, accountability work, forgiveness work. Just using the light of honesty to navigate those parts within me that were bringing me confusion or anger or some sort of inner injustice. And the more I pulled away from my family, the more, I started to get my femininity back. And it's been a real battle, between my masculine and feminine. And I envision myself as a beautiful woman, that bad bitch for real, but at the same time, I am not rushing. There's a part of me that wants to rush to get there, because there's a part of me that feels like I owe her. I ran away from her to put all my success into him. And that is what my family wanted from me, you know what I mean? They didn't want me to be that chain breaker. And they had put me in a place of mental and spiritual entrapment via sexual abuse. And I mean a lot of it. And there are times where, in my vision, I get closer and closer to, being this woman that I know I'm meant to be. But, I would then, some dreams will come back or flashbacks will come back. And so fighting through all of that, and making sure that I'm compassionate towards myself regardless, it's inevitable that I'll get there. But having been part of LGBTQ communities, it, at first I was I was one of those trans people where I was kind of, hard on the pronouns, like, I'm he, and you need to get that shit right, but that was only because I was afraid to be her. And if I was ever exposed to be her, in my mind, subconsciously and consciously, it's, here comes more rape. Here comes more men trying to come after me. And no matter what, I always stayed doing the inner work, no matter how I identified. And in 2017, I was homeless. It was one of my times I was homeless in California, LA. And I went to this clinic and only been there like maybe less than 4 times. She was like, well, given your, and it was a social worker, given your position, we can give you the surgery for free. I said, what? That right there was like everything on a silver platter. That's like a $8,000 to $10,000 to $15,000 surgery. And with that also came the legal name change for free. I said, oh my God, I made it, right? So she told me where to go. I go to downtown LA. I met her with other trans people. And, it was the perfect view. I'm sitting there and I'm the only one facing this big window at the top floor. And you see the buildings, you see the mountains. The sky is white, blue, pink, and you see the sun starting to set, right? And then because I'm so tapped into my spirituality, I'm highly psychic, I'm signing these papers, everything's all good. And I hear her say, please don't get rid of me. Please don't let me go. I said, bitch, where you been? Where you been? You know what I mean? I'm signing the papers now, and she's like, don't let me go. And immediately she reminded me of the time I went to go get testosterone in Philly years before that. And I felt her pull out of my body, like we separated from that point. And I was like, dang. So I finished the paperwork, but I never followed through with the surgery or the name change. And I kept working on myself, and about a couple years after that, I decided to go on an ayahuasca retreat, and I took out my binder, what compresses the breast down. And I'm looking at it, and I'm like, why am I using this? Like, I'm suffering. It's hot out there. You know what I mean? Like, I feel constricted no matter what. So forget about it. I think I'm just gonna go back to being a woman. And I started that journey in Peru on an ayahuasca retreat. And ayahuasca told me not to go back home. And what did I do? I ended up going back home, and I was able to fully see the envy in my family. I really saw it with new eyes. Like, when I went back, everything. When I tell you I went through the book of Job, I really went through that. And so it's been an up and downhill battle, because then I ended up becoming homeless again. And I was not gonna sleep on the street looking like a beautiful woman. Crazy. So I had to camouflage myself back into my masculinity, and it's been like that ever since. But despite everything, and I can blame the world for how it all is, just taking accountability for my fears, taking accountability for my own feelings, not pushing anybody to align with my feelings because I'm scared, because my traumas are coming up, and I need you to protect me because they didn't protect me. But I needed to make sure that I grounded myself in my faith, and knowing that no matter what, I'm gonna be okay. And I'm still working on it. I'm still in survival mode, but I'm also in my thrival mode. And I pray for anybody out there who has been through sexual abuse. Most people who have been through deep trauma like that, they don't remember up until around age 29, which is when I remember. And I just want to say, heal from the inside out before you change the physical, and make sure that your mind, body, and spirit is aligned before you make any moves physically. And no matter what, still got love for you. Yeah. Appreciate y'all. Appreciate y'all.
What a gift.
Thank you.
To hear your story, and like every time you open up and speak about your experience, because I know you're a poet, and it's your poetry in the book. It's like so much is condensed into your poetry, which is so beautiful. I knew that your poem was powerful, of course, when I read it. It came off to me as regal and raw. Regal and raw. Like that's it. Like there was like gold. Like I got like a lot of like visionary energy in there. And every time I listen to you, because I know you've spoken a bit about your journey on YouTube as well. Everything makes sense of like how you convey your message and your energy through your art. But wow, you've really been on a trip, and yeah, I trust that you're going to you are on the right path, and because you're connecting with your heart, and that's the most important thing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for letting me be a part of this, with you guys, and hit me up. You know what I mean?
I did.
Yeah,
That's why
I was like, yo, word, I'm down for this. Let's talk some shit through some poetry right quick.
Literally
you know what I mean?
did. I was like, hello.
I'm like, yeah, I'm down. You know what I mean? I appreciate it. And, this is what I wanted. I wanted to be with like-minded Black queens, you know what I mean? To look up to be able to be a part of everybody's journey. And I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate you too.
Yeah, thank you.
Ooh, I mean, wow. First, I think it's my turn, if you will, to like kind of share a little bit about my piece. But I just really want to like take a moment to just like sit with everything that you've just shared so powerfully. Such beauty, such an amazing ability to reflect on like the trauma that it should not have happened to you. And I'm sorry that it happened to you. But I had several connections to like things that I thought about how this ideology has shown up and has affected women and people in general, but women specifically. Yeah, I agree with Nevline. I also read your poem and I found it powerful, but you literally just read the first line and you just added so much context to like that line about knowing that you were different. So just thank you for that gift, like Nevline said. And I was looking at the title of the book, She Holds the Line, and I just was reading more meaning into like that part of the title, line, right? So you read that single line. Anyway, yeah. So my piece is called, it's the fourth chapter in the anthology, and it's called In Preferred Pronouns We Trust. And that's because I really wanted to talk about how this ideology kind of functions as like this, as a quasi religion. There's cult-like elements to it. And wow, I'm still like reflecting on your poem, because what I submitted was an essay and a poem. And the essay kind of talks about my journey from, again, being an adherent of the belief system and then kind of realizing that it doesn't quite make sense. There were just inconsistencies that you weren't allowed to just powerfully or like clearly say what the inconsistencies were without being canceled or censored or told that you were bigoted or there's something wrong with you for noticing the inconsistencies. And so to me, that was like, that's a control mechanism, and it feels very religious. And I feel like I left a really controlling religious context. So I grew up Muslim, and I left Islam when I was 15 because of my perception of this, it's really intense patriarchal like way of viewing the world. And this ideology like just reminded me so much of just another patriarchal religion is what it seemed like to me. So I wanted to talk a little bit about like my thoughts about that and like how I came to that understanding. And then also I weaved in friendships and romances that I've had with men and women. I'm bisexual. And so I wanted to, because I tend to be just like open-hearted. I like people. I like human beings. I like differences. I want to know what makes people click. Like I ended up in more than one romance with men and women who considered themselves like trans non-binary or something, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I was confronted with like trying to see them as they saw themselves, but not really being able to do that. And then kind of sitting with like the dissonance that brought up for me. And I feel like what you've shared like really speaks to like what I was sensing. So like I was never trans identified or non-binary identified, but I've dated people who felt that way about themselves. And so like I was intuitively sensing that they're shielding themselves in some way. Like they're protecting who they truly are when they have this overlay over their sex, and they say, I'm not a sex, I'm non-binary, I'm not a man, I'm a woman, I'm not a woman, I'm a man. I felt like there was hiding going on. And there was a part of me that felt really compassionate and really like open-hearted towards those people, because I can understand on some level like why you want to hide when society tells you that there's something wrong with you when you show up in the world in a gender non-conforming way. So if you are, you know, a woman and you do things, you like things that, you know, maybe lots of women and girls around you don't relate to in some sense, right? There's a lot of hatred and misunderstanding of people that show up in different ways. But from my perspective, the answer that, you know, like the people I dated or people I was friends with, the answer that they came upon, which was, well, I'm gender nonconforming, so that means I'm trans, I'm non-binary. That was the wrong answer. Like the right answer to me is no, step powerfully into who you really are and say, this is me. Maybe you don't understand that I'm a masculine woman or I'm a feminine man, but like this is how the universe, goddess, God, whatever, created me to be, and this is who I am. And to me, that's the right answer. And I just always had this like weird, it was hard for me to feel that that was the answer, but also want to like honor that that's not what the people I was dating felt about themselves. So I was like just in this constant state of dissonance, like trying to see them the way they saw themselves and then realizing I couldn't do it. So that's like a little bit of the narrative that I wrote in the essay. But the poem that I submitted, which I added to the end of the essay, was a poem that I wrote in response to one of those people that I dated, one of those women that I dated who considered herself non-binary. And first I'm going to actually read, not the poem, but I'm going to read an excerpt from a journal entry. So before I read the excerpt, I'll start with this passage on page 32, which says, there was one non-binary identified woman with whom I felt a deep connection to a few years ago. While in my heart of hearts, I could not process her as a they, them, I tried my best to retrain my brain to do so. I felt guilty for not being able to naturally relate to her as they, so I would practice doing so by referring to her by that plural pronoun in my journal. But it all felt very stilted, and it seemed more difficult to access my true feelings about whatever I was writing about when I would start my entries with that false identifier. Here's an excerpt from a journal entry about our relationship. I'm using their pronouns as much as I can, but I realize that those pronouns make me feel disconnected from her. When I use they, I feel a barrier in a wall. When I use she, I feel tapped into their heart, her heart. This gives me more insight into the they-them pronoun phenomenon. It is a barrier, a shield, and a wall that attempts to protect the gender nonconforming from societal harm. So I'll stop there. There's more that I can say about what I wrote, and maybe later on I'll share a little bit more, but yeah, I just wanted to reflect that based on what you've shared.
Thank you so much, Sia. And I have a cough a little bit, but yeah, your piece, as I mentioned to you, was like, I was chatting with Sia before this, like about a week ago, and I was like, you know, as an editor, when I was getting everyone's pieces, I was like, yeah, this is really wonderful. This is powerful. This is the shit. And then, you know, but it's like I'm using editor brain. But as I read it again after the book was created and I could rest and read it as a reader, I was like, whoa, this is like starting from the beginning, starting with yours, starting like getting to I didn't get past like the fifth chapter because it's such a rich book. It's like a quaint book. It's not super long, but it's such a rich book. And your piece was like, this is fire. Like, like everyone's piece is fire, but I had to tell you, like, this is fire because I don't see a lot of people bringing up the religious aspect and going into depth about the religion. I mean, I know I've talked about it on my Substack, and that I believe that I wrote an essay called "Transphobia is Not Real," and that was like one of my hallmark essays, like from 2024, and I was talking about how transgender is grouped in with all of these other civil rights, all these other groups who have fought for civil rights based on oppression and discrimination based on their immutable qualities, like their ancestry, skin color, biological sex, and sexual orientation, which are all things that are like innate, that you can't change. Whereas, trans is an identity, and it's a very fluid concept, that, you can, it's very mutable. Literally, it functions as a mutable identity. And I said that, that it should be, if anything, framed as a religious freedom. If you're going to go the route of, legally protecting this group, it should be framed as a religion, because it is literally a metaphysical belief. It is literally a belief that you have an inner gender that is separate from your physical body, and that, your feelings dictate like all these things. It's really based on like stereotypes, gender stereotypes, which are regressive and oddly conservative. They're calling us conservative, right? But you're a Republican. You're a Trump supporter. Yeah, all these things. But like, I don't see anyone going it. Like, I loved. It hit me when you start going into like how this is going back into the ancient, like the mythological, like tying it to patriarchal religion, right? And how this is a patriarchal religion, and talking about Zeus, and like how like they're framing it. What did you say again? Like I'll let you. What did you say?
Okay, I may as well. Thank you for bringing that up. I intended to actually start with that, but I think I was just so moved by your piece that I just was like, let me go to the other part. Yeah, I know. So, I will actually just read directly a part of that. I think I'll just start. So I'll start from the beginning. So I wasn't always a TERF. An epithet that I only use as a tongue-in-cheek way to convey that I am someone who strongly advocates for the right of women to maintain the sanctity of our single-sex spaces. However, it seems to be in my blood and my bones to intuitively find my political home base in movements that prioritize women's liberation. I suspect that this stems in part from my need to correct from the patriarchal religious conditioning that I had been awash with from birth to young adulthood. I am a former Muslim, raised in Islam by parents who converted before I was born. And I note that, like gender identity ideology, Islam is also inexplicably popular in leftist spaces despite its objectively anti-woman teachings. So maybe eventually finding my way to the unpopular but female-affirming side of the current gender identity culture wars was inevitable. Once I fully recognized that gender identity ideology, which I will also call trans ideology, represented yet another patriarchal religious overlay upon women's freedom and sovereignty that was shielding its actual impact in the language of civil rights, I chose to stand firmly in my conviction that transgenderism is an insidious attempt to degrade, disrespect, and usurp the unique role that women play in creation. Patriarchal religions have always served the psychological function of inverting the natural human order by assigning the birthing function to men and male deities. Think Zeus birthing Athena from his head, or Eve emerging from Adam's rib. Trans ideology is no different, really, as it ultimately seeks to divorce women from female-specific power and assign it to men. It is so disrespectful to all human mothers who have facilitated our lives since the dawn of our time on the planet. Women birth us all. Men, trans-identified or not, cannot gestate or birth a single human being.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly the passage. Thank you so much. That was what I was talking about. The spiritual aspect of it, and how spiritually violent, like this is literally like religious abuse.
Yeah.
Right. And yet still it's framed as like
civil rights, social justice.
So many things. I mean, that's you know, a psyop. But
Yeah.
I had a dream about it. Anyway, now I'm saying it out loud.
I need to
But
hear
yeah, amazing, amazing work. So yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Before I move on, did you have any thoughts at all, or just
Yeah, you're so right about how it's treated like a religion, because you know how, like, when somebody wants to leave Scientology or they want to leave whatever religion they're leaving, and they look down at you, you know, like, oh, traitor. And that's how I felt in the LGBTQ community, especially in the trans community. It was like, what do you mean you're detransitioning? Like, I got more love as a transgender man than I did as a beautiful black woman, by my own family, by my own, you know, friends, co-workers. Like, I was just like, yo, time out. Like, this is what I was born as, and I just want to continue to be that. You know, I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not fighting for your invisible rights to express, you know, my masculinity in a way that you wouldn't, but you're mad at me for being a woman now? And you're a woman. There are women that were mad at me for this. You know, there were trans men that were mad at me for this. Everybody was mad. I'm like, yo, like, I'm really getting stoned out here. You know what I mean? Like, I couldn't get a job after that. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Like,
You couldn't get a job just because you said I'm a woman and that's who I am.
Yeah, one of the reasons.
Yeah.
You know, I won't go into the other ones, but it's like, you know, stone her, and I'm like, well, you said her, so thanks. You know what I mean? But like, I don't know what to do now. Like, you know, so it was rough. And it's just like, I thought you guys, I thought love was love. I thought you love me no matter what. Now I see you only love me because I'm a part of your agenda, and that's how you can catch it. You know, it's like, you know what? I really realized this abuse had a serious effect on me. When you say something like sexual abuse, it's like, okay, you need the love the most. Nah, they only gave it to me the most when, you know, I was feeding their agenda. And you really put it in such a way. Hold on. Your
right?
your title.
Not hold on.
I love the title too.
Your title was a punch to the gut. I'm like, yes, like, in preferred pronouns we trust. Like,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
holy shit. Like, it's revolved around the agenda for real, and the pronouns is the stamp. You know, and it's just like, you know, you put it in such a way where it's like it's like you played 5 chessboards at the same time and did checkmate on each one.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like,
That's what I'm trying to say.
like that. I was like, and you listen, you had to make me look up a lot of words. I'm like, quasi. I'm like, all right, I got this, you know. So, but that's the thing, like, because of that, you made people stop in their tracks to the point where they had to stop their little emotions and be like, let me look this up. And you helped, it's like you're helping to navigate molding the truth, or seeking the truth, rather than, you know, upholding the idea. What's the facts? What's the truth? And whether they choose to continue to believe what they believe afterwards or not, the route that you took, bomb as fuck, bro. Just bomb, bro. It's like, it's like on point. It's like, no matter what, you can't deny it. You know what I mean?
You can try.
Your piece was beautifully written.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes.
Yeah.
Take it in.
Okay.
Please take it
Breathe,
in.
madam.
Okay.
Because I had to. You know what I mean? I'm like, I'm like, yeah. All right, yeah. Yeah, all right.
Yeah. No, it was fire. So, the other thing I wanted to say too about the title is like it reminds me of money because of the stamp they put in God We Trust. And that's something that was like a big piece of it, money, government, and that is like all tied into the whole trans thing is like deeply. And I don't know if that was something that you thought about or if it was a more intuitive title, but that is definitely something like a very strong theme that came. I literally see money.
Yeah.
And there's so much money running through this, like through the pharmaceuticals, the medical, the like, it's very corporate at this point. Within the past 10 years, it's been corporatized. It's heavily institutionalized. And I watched that. And that's part of what I talk about in my piece, which I'll get into. But yeah, no, it was great.
I really appreciate both of your feedback because, as you know, like it can be difficult to talk about this and to have the convictions that we have and to know that we're misrepresented, like we are misunderstood no matter how well we try to articulate like why it is we believe what we believe or why it is we dissent. And so I appreciate hearing from both of you that maybe it will put a dent in the conversation that's being had. Even if people still decide that they disagree, like I appreciate hearing that perhaps it will still like cause them to stop and think a little bit. So thanks for that feedback. Yeah. And in terms of the corporate like kind of implication in the title, I didn't necessarily think about that on a conscious level, but I like what you said about like there are like all these different layers to it. Like it's not just the one thing. I think on an intuitive level, yes, I was aware that this is really getting at, I'm trying to like really pierce through like what we're pretending this is something that it's not. And let's look at what it actually is. Right. So yeah, money, government, religion, politics, all of these things that kind of intertwine to kind of like have us, do what we do in the service of this really regressive ideology. So,
yeah. Thank you.
And I'm excited to hear about your thoughts on your piece, which was also powerful. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad you read it. Yeah.
Yes.
So my piece, I should get the book because y'all have your book. Right. My piece is called "A True Artist is Born to Be a Heretic," and it is a retrospective on my journey of waking up to the harms of gender ideology, which, by the way, when I first started waking up, I had no, like, this term, gender ideology, wasn't, like, in my consciousness at all. Like, all these words and, articulation, whatever. I just saw what I saw. I saw harm being done in the name of a trans identity, and I was like, I have to say something. So that started when I was living in New York in 2013, and I was also part of a local LGBTQ organization for people of color. And they were based out of Manhattan. It was a community space. And there was a very large, very masculine Black man who called himself a woman in the space, and everyone worshipped him. And he utilized that as kind of like an opener, as so many of them do. Although, of course, not all, but it is a tactic to get in the brain of a female friend of mine, and he groomed her, and he eventually sexually assaulted her. She was quite young, and she was like into the whole queer thing. So that's another thing that my piece goes into is the whole like queer culture, right? And which is also like queer used to mean same-sex attraction. It used to acknowledge sex because, as we know, queer is, it's historically a slur, a homophobic slur for same-sex attracted individuals. More so like used to be like for men, but, also for women sometimes. And then it became something else altogether. So it slowly started getting watered down into all these other things. In this like very vague yet oddly specific subculture that's very dysfunctional.
To say the least.
To say the least, to say the very least. And so anyway, she was bisexual. She identified as queer, and so it was like, oh, I'm queer, you're queer. Like what he was on. It was, I'm queer, you're queer. I'm a non-man, and you're a non-man. And so he groomed her into like letting go of her safety instinct, or like reducing her boundaries, which is a big part of the whole psychological manipulation behind this, is getting women to change and brainwash themselves into a different perception of you as a man, and to start putting you into a separate category, and so that we don't have to we have to police ourselves out of the natural instincts that the fear, like healthy fear, that we will have against someone who can be a threat to our safety. And so he did that with her, and that was the beginning of me speaking out. I had a YouTube channel. I've had a YouTube channel since 2008, and at the time I was like, I just sat my black ass down and was like, trans women are not female. That is the name of the video, and that video was like one of my most viral videos on my. It didn't go viral the way that people go viral today. Like people get like mega million, billion, whatever. Like no, it was like in the tens of thousands of views, but it did get widely circulated, and it was very, very impactful, and it almost got my channel torn down. People, I think I don't know all of the different groups that tried to tear my channel down, but I do know that certain trans women tried to tear it down. And there were also trans-identified people who agreed with me, and people from different groups who agreed with me. Because I was also like not that educated on the topic. So I was like contradicting myself too. Right? Like nowadays I'm a lot clearer, but that was like my first foray. It was like in 2013, because I was really upset about what happened to my friend. And then I just talk about my journey of like making that video, the responses, the different communities who came to support me, the different communities that came to bash me, the videos that I made afterwards. It was like a whole fiasco for like a year. And then I talked about my journey, as the trans became more corporatized, and more mainstream, I started to feel more and more of a push to be silent. And there was like, internalized shame, because it was, that's a part of it. It's not just like acceptance, it's not just that, because it's never just that, right? It's also and these other people who have any questions. If you have any questions, there's increasing punishments for you, right? I felt that before I understood it. And so I started to feel like I needed to like hide. And so that video became, like, I toggled that video's visibility for years, and so there was that, like, that video was like a seed that was planted inside of me, because as I went through the years, I also dated trans-identified people. I mean, I think that pretty much, like, I want to say almost all of my female partners have disidentified with womanhood in some kind of way. Yeah. or they previously did, and they kind of toggled back and forth. And maybe they identified back as a woman when they were with me, but then they had a history of identifying as trans, and then when I saw them years later, they identified as trans. Like, it was, I've been with, you know, differently identified women, right, over the years, and I didn't have any problem with it until I started to really get up close and really see that this is hurting them. And, you know, I was always like very affirming. I didn't really go into detail about my relationships in this essay. I go into it in some other pieces of writing. but um but yeah, like I also went into like what my second wake up call was when I moved to Berlin, which Berlin is like queer trans central. It's like, Berlin is crazy. But yeah, I moved to Germany in like 2018, and I started noticing some things. I started noticing how like women were, there would be like female run spaces, and women were like listed last, or not listed at all, or this is queer trans only. And it's like, but who are you inviting? Are these actual people? Are these bodies? Are these identities? And so I'm like, well, if I want to get this acupuncture, if I want to go to this yoga, if I want to go to get these wellness services or be a part of community with, for all intents and purposes, other women who share all these things with me, we're all like same-sex attracted, maybe it is, and in some cases for people of color or women of color, but you don't want to name that, right? Then, you know, I need to, you know, don this identity of being queer somehow. Like this, I talked about a lot of things, like pronoun circles and like the humiliation ritual that is the pronoun circle, of like being forced to share your pronouns, and the spotlight that got placed on me, and how like it was unrelenting even when I tried to like pass. People were they're very passive aggressive. It's like a lot of passive aggression with that. So just like telling these stories and how I came back home to myself in my own way. Really, it came through like wanting to host a women's space. You know, as I mentioned, I'm a pole dancer, and I also am creating in the wellness space. So I want to create a wellness space for women that was pole dance, like where we could do movement that was like inspired by some pole dancing, but also like doing some meditative work, doing some like yoni breathing and everything. And, you know, the whole experience of like hosting a women's space, and like the intuitive fear that I had, knowing what kind of political environment that I was in, and then receiving like policing, like warnings. And I didn't overtly exclude anyone. I didn't say anything. I didn't say this is for this only female. I didn't say anything. I just wanted to host a women's space, and I was getting all these warnings. Like it was so stressful, and I had to stop that work and figure out exactly how I felt about things like the idea of including trans women into female spaces, or spaces that I intended to be for women, and to work with the female anatomy. Spaces that I wanted to just have as a safe space for women to heal, especially from, we're dealing with women who have I have had a sexual abuse history too. You know, we're trying to heal from that, working with our bodies, right? And it's like, I had to stop that work for some years and really figure this shit out, because I wanted to be responsible about it. I wanted to be clear. I wasn't clear. So that goes into that story about my journey, and my journey of like finding my courage, because all this while I'm going through these experiences, my Trans Women Are Not Female video is sitting there, either locked on private, or it's unlisted and it's hiding, you know. And I was like, wow, I always knew, like, if I were to ever, like, if someone ever found out about this, like, I would be toast, you know. Like, I was just like, socially. Then I talk about like the cancellation as an artist that went on, like when I finally did start speaking up. And you know, just the whole journey and to where I am right now, which is being outspoken and sticking my neck out there and still being an artist, you know, and doing really important work, but work that is not easy to do, and that does like come with, I guess, a cost on the surface, but I think that I see it as more of an investment. Yeah. I do. So that's my piece. Yeah.
Your piece is deeply appreciated because the fact that you talked about, because I did read your piece, and it hit me hard when you said humiliation ritual, because everybody is like, what's your pronouns, and it's so expected, you know, to be placed in, you know, in that category, and it's almost like I don't know why I see it like this, but it's almost like, are you top shelf alcohol type, you know what I mean? And it's like, yo, I just want to heal, you know what I mean? I don't want to give any more than that. It already took me a lot for me to come here, you know what I mean? So it's just like that level of expectation, and, you know, the fact that they asked you again, like, because you tried to dodge it, and they were like, it's like, damn, you know what I mean? I can't just be me, like, you know, we're supposed to just be. But you're right, passive aggressive is like the way they are, you know what I mean? And it's sad. I'm glad you talked about it, because the fact that you said that you felt pressure to be anything else but a black woman, it's peer pressure, you know what I mean? And they're doing this 24/7. It's just like, I'm breaking out of that, and your courage is deep for that, you know what I mean? Like, you know, screw that, I'm gonna still keep going. Matter of fact, I'm gonna make this whole book, and I'm gonna have a whole crew with me right quick, you know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have to agree that the courage is extremely inspiring, and obviously we're joining you, but like, thank you for like lighting the way, and thank you for even putting this together and asking us to contribute our voices, because it's scary, but I feel like I've been learning from you over the years that like you said about it, like, this is an investment. So going back to the corporate money, like all the things you kind of talked about before, like, okay, they have their money, but now what are we investing? Where are we putting our money and our attention and our like energy? Like, let's not, like, if we do nothing, we kind of like swept up in their corporate BS. But like, what can we do to like build our own structures and our own systems of support that are actually affirming, right? So like, I like the language investment that you used, because it does extract from you. It is a cost when you decide that you're gonna go against this like humongous rock. It's not a grain. Like, you're going against you're going against the grain, I'll say. It does cost, and it sometimes it feels too high to pay, and I certainly have been quiet for a really long time, but I think kind of just like admiring you and watching your journey, like how outspoken you are despite like the pain of being canceled, and in one of your blog pieces you talked about the grief of like that's inherent when you decide to be firm and strong in what you believe when there's this huge system that is against you. It is literally painful. Like when you know what I mean? When you're losing connections, relationships, you're misunderstood, you're maligned, there's like career opportunities or things that kind of pass your way. But again, I appreciate what you said and what you shared about this being an investment. And now here we are out here doing the same. Like, okay, we're going to stand firm, and we're also going to just not be bowed. When I did read your piece, I have to say, like, the minute I saw the word brolic, like in like brolic in like it like what was it, bolded and italicized, I cracked up. I was like, Nevline, it's freaking hilarious. Just the way you have your little inflections. Sorry.
Bold in italics.
Oh, not italics. Sorry, it's bolded. But yeah, now this trans woman was a 6 foot something brolic black man. And I started cracking up like this. Nevline's hilarious. And so then I just, yeah, I almost texted you like in the moment. It's like you're hilarious, but I know. But I was too busy. I was like reading the book. I wanted to make sure I read the entire book before, we met. So I was like reading the book before work, like in my bed. Like I was like, this is hilarious. Okay, let me get ready for work. Hilarious, but also like obviously like there's like all the emotions like. It's hilarious because this is absurd. Like we are faced with something that is extremely absurd, but we have to pretend like it is like amazing and just wonderful. And I think someone else talked about the story of the emperor having no clothes. Like we have to pretend as if we don't see that this is nonsense, right? So yeah, there's sadness, there's grief, like that's inherent when you decide to like stand in your integrity, but also you can also step back and laugh at some of it because it's crazy. Yeah.
No, thank you. You actually reminded me of a passage that I thought was funny, but also like very real. Like, so I was talking about, so I'll just read this passage. And it's talking about like the phenomenon that I mentioned that I first saw in Berlin where I felt excluded from spaces that I should have belonged to simply because I don't identify as queer. Mm-hmm. Literally, like I could probably technically get away with saying that I am, but I don't. Anyway, I'm going to read the passage. Mm-hmm. Even when it came to public services that I could make functional use of, such as sliding scale acupuncture or yoga, some of these spaces explicitly stated that they were for queer and trans people only. And here is where the language coercion comes in. Could I technically claim a queer identity on the basis that I'm same-sex attracted? Sure, but I didn't want to. I don't like the word queer. I noticed that everybody and they straight mama was calling themselves queer for all sorts of reasons, despite it originally being a homophobic slur. The quote-unquote queer community had just become a flavorless sloop of rainbow-drenched, kink-infused, gobbledygook slop.
Yo, when I read that part, bro, I
she said it.
Felt it was
I agree.
funny, but I felt the drip of disgust. You know what I mean? Like, look at this rainbow snot bullshit. You know what I mean? Like, it's true.
Yeah.
It's true. It's so messy. It's muddy. It's gross. And to feel disgusted to not be not only who you truly are, but what you actually are, is almost unfathomable. And how accepted that is. It's like, oh, well, what's wrong with that? She just asked what her pronouns were. I'm like, but that's invasive.
Exactly. It's invasive. And I figured that out some years ago, and like the amount of work that I've had to do, like boundary work, to figure out how to navigate these sorts of things, of like coming up with, what do I say to protect myself so that I don't have to betray myself in these situations where people are demanding something, softly demanding, but demanding nonetheless, right? Like I think, what was the name of the article that I wrote like a while back? Pronoun rituals, pronoun circles are humiliating, where I was not allowed to begin a class, like a circus arts class. It was an aerial arts class. I was not allowed to begin the class until I gave my pronouns.
For aerial arts.
For aerial arts. And it's like there is actually like contextually there is no in terms of how we're interacting in the class, even if that's something that you did want, which you like, that's its own thing. but you're not going to be saying my pronouns other than me and you
Right. Right.
during the class. Okay, you're not using me as an example. You're not instructing using me at the front. Okay, you just want this because this is a practice that is ingrained in you. You want to cover a lot of it is like about them covering their own ass. And I mentioned that to you too, like that there was a situation that I was in even recently where it's like I also like dodged the pronoun question. I just passed on it, just didn't answer it, right? And for a group of women, we're all women in this space. We're all Black women in this fucking space. Anyway, but I didn't answer it. And then, you know, another young lady came in, and when she was telling, you know, she was talking about me to the group, she said, she, in front of everyone, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry I didn't ask for your pronouns."
I'm sorry.
Like, and then I said, "Oh, that's okay." Like, cause I just wanted her just keep going, whatever, like,
Right.
whatever.
Right.
So she decides to use they. So now I'm the they. Now I'm a they them. Now to everyone, I'm they. Okay? And unless you object, you know, now you have been named. And that's what people do with me all the time at the cash register, at like just random cats. People are always calling me a they. And I've talked about that too in other writings, not this book, but just other writings, how like this is racialized. Okay? Like, you're not doing that to like your typical, like if it was just not me, but just take the way that I dress, the way that I carry myself and slap it on a white girl, you are not going to they her. Okay? You're doing it because you're othering me. And because this queer shit is about being the other and fetishizing being othered, creating yourself into the other. Yeah. If you weren't before, especially, right?
Yeah.
And that's a whole thing.
Yeah.
That's a whole thing. But like that whole like mandatory they, it's like, no, like this is very specific. You're trying to play it off as if it's neutral, but it's all very specified. It's very targeted. You're targeting me with this shit, right? You don't do that to every single person. Right. Okay?
Right.
So there's so much more I could say, but I have a little snapshot of my journey from the very beginning till today in the book, and so that's my thing.
I want to emphasize in that last passage you read, the kink infused part. I just want to underscore that, not because I have more to say, but because yes, that's a part of it for whatever reason. That's a part of the gobbledygook slap. And then, but also, so I also wanted to bring it back to something more serious, which is, yes, it's extremely absurd, it's ridiculous, and if it wasn't harming, like literally harming women, like, and men and everyone, but like specifically we're talking about women, like there is grooming happening in these spaces. Like women are being groomed out of our instincts to like recognize when someone wants to prey on you, wants to be a predator, you know what I mean? There are a lot of there are too many men out there that want to fill that role. Like, I don't want to say the not all men thing. We know it's not all men, but like, however, the people that are predating on women are pretty much men, right? So like, when you have this ideology that tells someone that, oh, we're the same because we're we're not sexed. We're both non-binary. Like someone that has the predator's instinct, and like, of course they're gonna come and use that to do what they want to do with you, because you have not actually changed. Like, you may call yourself non-binary, you may say that you don't have a sex, but that's just not true. That's not how humans are. That's not how we come. We come as sexed beings, right? And so maybe your religion says that's a lie, but your actual material reality means that now you've unfortunately you are in this position where you can't even like effectively like protect yourself to the extent that maybe you could have had you been like, wait a minute, this person doesn't have good intentions. Like, this is someone that wants to use me, right? And that happens too much. And it's really, yeah. Also, like, that just reminds me of, I'm so glad that you were able to include the voices of women who, someone who's currently incarcerated and
Tomiekia.
Yeah,
I just talked to her this morning.
Yeah. And someone who was formerly incarcerated, because like, I think like, and I do mention this in my essay, like that is one of the most disgusting outcomes of this entire ideology. You have women who are disproportionately, but not only, Black and poor, imprisoned in cages with rapists, with male rapists, because these men are women. These are the women that are paying the price of what's your pronoun? You're they, them. While we're out here pretending as if that makes us enlightened.
Right.
Like how are we leaving these women behind? Like it just that enrages me on a soul level to know that this is what we're doing. And you mentioned it also in the in your introduction, to the book, about how like there are women in captivity, literally, like dealing with the impacts of this bullshit. Sorry, I didn't mean to like use the S word on air, but it's bullshit.
It's bullshit.
It's bullshit.
With a capital B.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that you brought her up, because she's, I told her this morning, I'm like, I'm going to bring you into the podcast in spirit, because I know you can't be here. But and I told her we're going to do the podcast and everything. But, Tomiekia's piece, so I got her, her piece was the first that I got. She's such a powerful voice and a powerful being. There's so much that I could say about that, but she is so amazing. She's an incredible writer, but Tomiekia has been through it in prison with, being housed with male inmates who, and she talks about being like, so all of these things that we talk about, like these chips and these gashes that we deal with, like in the free world of like, our community breaking down, cancellation and loss of economic opportunity, all these things. And it's like, all of the fallout from this ideology all like lands disproportionately heavily, though not exclusively, disproportionately onto the shoulders of Black women, right? Because of our positioning in society, right? The percentage that we occupy of the homeless population, of the incarcerated population, of unemployment and all these things, it just naturally falls there. That's just the numbers. And and then when you add on top of that, like sexual orientation, like, for us, it's like, the loss of community on a very intimate level. Like, it's hard to make friends and like just like be normal, because it's like, oh, you have this thing that's like lurking in the background of this thing that in your heart, that you understand about the ideology, and you're at odds with it. And even if you try to make friends with people in the community, they don't want to be. They eventually, if they really find out, like the end point is that you're gone. If it's a matter of you versus the system, they're choosing the system every single fucking time.
Yep.
Unfortunately,
it is crazy. And Tomiekia's story, and like the stories of other female inmates like her, are the reason that pushed me to start speaking out again in 2022. I read letters from female inmates, which I did talk about in my essay, and I was like, their bodies, their wombs, their lives, their literal, like, this like granular level of like security, like where you lay your head at night, which Tomiekia talks about with like all this stuff about like trans women in women's sports. She's like, you don't have to sleep with a male rapist, a serial rapist up at the top bunk.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I do.
Right.
I fucking do. Right? Like that, like everything. I'm not going to minimize all the other experiences because it's all part of the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like that's end game.
Yep.
That's like the logical conclusion of this entire shit.
Yep.
Is the erosion of our boundaries, and our freedom of speech, our rights to exist safely and in community with one another, and to just our boundaries, really. And it's crazy because it's like there's something that you said that reminded me. It's like, you know, they say, oh, like, you know, protect Black women. I mean, that was a slogan before they replaced it with protect Black trans women. The dolls, protect the dolls. Like that's like protect Black women. Do you even hear that shit anymore? Anyway, but like, they will pretend that they're for Black women and for marginalized, and they list all these things of like all their marginalizations and oppressions and shit, and it's like, but you don't actually fucking care about us, though. And even some of y'all who are part of the same group, it's like this internal colonization, right? This is colonialism, right? In its finest. And it's like, that's what colonialism did. And that's the grief that I had mentioned in another post that I did about that. This was how colonialism functioned. It didn't just function through guns, although it does also, you know, there's that violence element too within trans activism, but it functions psychologically. Like there's missionary work, right? And it's like you tear communities apart by saying, look, if you can identify with me and what I got going on, if you can identify with power, you know, you're gonna have to turn away from your own people. We're gonna separate each other and turn each other, so that some people, right, some Black women are like, or some women in general, or some people are like, they're trying to be part of that system and they're turning away from their own kindreds, so that they can have that fragile sense of, you know, safety, security, institutionalized support and all these things. But it's like, and then they're couch, it's really weird. They're couching it under like support for marginalized people, and it's like, no, actually, y'all really don't see that you're like further oppressing the most marginalized people, the people who are like the most invisible, which to me are incarcerated women, incarcerated Black women. So it was an honor to include Tomiekia in the book. And that this is not a book about incarcerated, because sometimes it's like you just see incarcerated authors in, you know, pieces about that are just for incarcerated. I'm like, no, like her spirit is free. I want her to be free with us. So yeah.
I have to also say, like, in terms of including Tomiekia, I remember the story. Like the reason why she's even in prison is because of male violence, like domestic violence, defending herself, and now she's subjected to this as a prisoner. And we're out here. Trans women are women. I'm a they, them, non-binary, kink, slop, all this stuff that we're doing out here, and like the greatest impact is on the bodies, like the literal bodies of these women. It's enraging. And I have to say, it is one of the things that makes me go, okay, I know that I'm, you know, when people see me, I'll lose several more friendships there'll probably will be a negative fallout from this, right? But I have to say, like, that, knowing that there's like these women, you know what I mean, that are just, that have to deal with this on that level, and like the culture like is so blind, the culture in the outside, like it just, we just accept it, like that is, I don't know, like I feel like they deserve people that are willing to say, no, this is not okay. And it's okay, it's not okay on several levels, but like we feel, maybe not directly, but we feel what's happening to you, and we care, right? And we want to speak. And also have platforms for you to speak as well. So yeah, there was more you shared, like about colonialism and like other things that I may want to, like, I don't know, I'll probably like have more to reflect on and share in this space. I know we don't have a lot of time.
We're coming to the end.
Yeah.
I was hoping to have a little space for a really brief Q&A, and then we can get into like where we can all find each other. Okay. So maybe just a couple of questions. So these are questions that I opened up to other authors who are not able to be here. Let's see. So this question is from A. Shantae. I will ask, what do you believe the long-term cultural impact will be of Black women openly opting out of trans ideology?
I think it's going to be a huge fallout. I see Black women willingly and forcibly, whether that may be due to disease from hormone therapy, or a body part taken away or added on, or just like a all-out surrender. I think if I'm answering this question correctly, I think a lot of Black women are just going to want to come back home. And if home is where the heart is, then, you know, we really just want to get back to that space of self-love. And I think many are going to start to see there's a version of love in these trans hardcore spaces, but not a real practice of self-love. And I think that where they will see that practice is where we're going to end up going.
Right. Yeah, thank you for that. I see that as well. Sia.
Yeah. I guess I'll share like what I hope will happen. I hope that, like, with more of us beginning to speak out openly and sharing our perspectives, I hope that we will inspire other people to stop and think, and to also add their voices to hopefully unravel like some of the impacts of this ideology, because it hasn't been good, like the net impact that it's had on society. Yeah. So, I mean, what I again, in the short term, I am foreseeing like negativity, and I think that's part of what kept me quiet for so long, right? Because I mean, negativity exists even when I cautiously try to like hint at, oh, maybe I don't think that way. Suddenly doors close, like friendships end, and like like things happen that make me want to be quiet. But and so then I would just go within and just study more, but not share it. But now that I'm beginning to share and other people are sharing, and again, hopefully that sparks more and more and more sharing, and hopefully it just allows for like, listen, I don't think we're going to get rid of people that believe in trans, because I do think it's a religion. Mm-hmm. And just like there's lots of religions in the world, I think there's always going to be people that believe that. But I think that what's necessary is that we literally treat it like a religion. Like, you cannot force this upon me. You cannot say that, oh, I don't believe, because because I don't believe in I don't believe that trans women are women. Oh my, like now I have to lose my job. I hope that we get to a place where we're able to be heretics openly, and it's just, like it is what it is. Like we're there's a reason why we have the voices that we have. So sorry, I answered that kind of imperfectly and a little like all over the place.
No, you're great.
But I'm gonna
Yeah.
stop here. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that this is, I mean, this anthology is groundbreaking, and it's the beginning of something. It's a movement, you know. I mean, I think that us, like Black women, always add so much texture and complexity, and we really we draw out complexities that already exist within any philosophy, any political movement, anything. And so I think that this is a big part of that, just through our sharing our stories and our lived experiences. So I believe that this is definitely going to inspire other women to come forward, and the verb is already happening, but I think that it's going to definitely continue through this. So we're wrapping up. Just really quick, I want to encourage you all to get your copy of She Holds a Line, Black Women Speak on Gender Ideology. It's available on various platforms. You can find a link to the book in the description. You're welcome to find me on Substack. My link to my blog and websites will also be in the description. Sia and Krysta, can you let us know where we can find you?
Yes, I'm newly on Substack as well. Sunlight Moonlight is the name of my Substack, and yeah, I'm practicing not censoring myself on anything that I believe. So you may see my blog and be like, "Oh, that's interesting." Anyway,
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You can find me on Substack, Krysta Allura. You can also find me on my landing page, beacons.ai/Krysta Allura, and Krysta Allura on my social medias, so you can check me out there.
Thank you. And their links will also be in the description as well. So thank you both for being here. This was amazing, and I'm just so grateful that I knew that this was going to be a fruitful discussion, and I'm just so grateful, and I'm happy to, I'm just elated and delighted. So thank you all for listening, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.